Now that you've painted basic geometric forms using complementary colors, we want to paint some slightly more detailed or advanced things, since you're probably not going to just paint paintings of spheres and cubes. So let's look at this blueberry, for example. Once again, we could paint it just using tints and shades, but what we want to work on is using complementary colors to paint so that the paintings don't look dingy or overly dark or muddy. So if I were going to paint this blueberry, I'm going to follow the same steps that I did with my forms. First, I want to draw out all of the planes, identifying where is the highlight, where is the midtone, where is the shadow, where is the reflected light, and in this case there's not a cast shadow, but if there were, you would draw that in as well. Then you want to mix your colors and block them in. So I have my tint here for my highlight, I have my midtone here, which is blue with just a little bit of white, so another tint. For the shadow, I have added blue's complement, orange, to make the shadow, and here for the reflected light, I'm using a little bit of that highlight color. For the background, I've just marked in orange to keep things simple. Now in the third step is where you want to start refining, layering your colors, making things a little bit smoother. So again, as you're looking at your blueberry and you're deciding where the highlight, midtone, shadow, core shadow, and reflected light are, it won't always be super clear. So as you're marking in the values, use your best judgment. This is your job as the artist, and this is sometimes what makes painting really hard. It's not always clear where those different values are. So do the best you can to mark them in. So in case you need a visual for how I mixed the colors, refer to this slide. So we have tint, blue and white here for the highlight, once again, a tint or the hue for the midtone. So you could use plain blue, but I found that in my picture the blue looked a little lighter, so I made another tint. Again, mixing complementary colors, blue and orange, making a tone for your shadow. I added more orange to make it darker for the core shadow, and then using a tint here for the reflected light. Now when you go into the layering stage, there are two ways that you can blend or work with paint to make things smooth. The first is wet into wet. So you'll notice that when you're using one wet paint color and blending it into another wet paint color, it blends really easily. You sort of do have to work quickly to make this happen. If you choose this approach, I would mix your colors ahead of time so that you don't waste time by mixing the colors each time in fear that it might dry. The other is wet into dry. So let's just say you put down a color and then it dries, but you want to blend another color into it. So what I would do is mix a color that is very close, sort of in between, and you'll slowly incorporate wet paint into that dry paint, bridging the gap between those two colors. We're probably going to do a combination of both of these throughout our next project. Wet into wet as you're working in class, but when you come into the next class to continue your project will be dry. So then we'll be working a lot with wet into dry. So your next practice is on that same sketchbook page that you did the two forms. In the remaining two quadrants, you're going to choose two fruits or vegetables that can be found on the topics page in a gallery, and you'll choose two of them and paint them using complementary colors. We are on the topics page, and here where it says fruits and veggies, if you click, the gallery will open and there are a couple of different options for you to choose from. If you're really set on painting something that's not here, like a kiwi, for example, that's fine. Just go ahead and show it to me first. The reason why I've chosen these images is because the values are really clear and it'll be easier for you to paint. But if you have another suggestion, just let me know, and most likely I will say okay.